Welcome back to the Art of Football 365. We are back with another draft episode. This is part two. We dropped part one yesterday. And as you can tell, we are joined by a guest, and it is part two with JTuck as well. We're excited to have the man back. This is Gannon's first time kind of getting to sit down and, and talk football with JTuck. So we're blessed. We're happy to have this man back in here talking football. But before we dive into everything, let's Gronk spike that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and continue to give us that feedback. We appreciate all that feedback we get from you guys as we continue to grow. Check out our two sponsors, Driftless Quality Wear and Bocker Auto Group. I will also throw in the same note I threw in yesterday's episode. We're selling T-shirts on our social media pages for a kid named Eli Kleckler, who is from our community, who was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So continue to support that man. Just purchase a T-shirt, $20, turn in the order form, and all the proceeds go to him and his family. So thank you guys who have already purchased a T-shirt, reached out to me, donated. It means a lot, and it means a lot to this community in general. So let's keep fighting together, stand up together, and build a strong community. So this is part two. It's great to have JTuck back in here. I feel like a lot has changed, happened for the man since he was last in here. Got a lot of good things going on for him. So before we dive into some draft stuff, just let us know what you've been up to these last couple months. New gigs you got going on, new things in your life. Let's just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, man, what's going on, everybody? Man, thanks for having me back. And as you said, man, life is kind of moving fast, especially when it comes to this content in the media game. So as of right now, I've tuned in and joined in with my guy, Darren Smith, every Sunday morning on the Kansas City Radio 810 WHB ESPN Kansas City. So we do a radio show. We talk about football, basketball, just everything going on. And then Saturday morning, we have a show as well on Fox Sports that we do every Saturday morning as well. So it's been a great opportunity. Man, just opportunities after opportunities, man. I'm extremely blessed and thankful. Got to cover the Super Bowl, which is incredible. Got to cover the Kansas Jayhawks and their national championship run. I'm a huge Jayhawks fan, so I'm still feeling like a little bit of a champion right now. Still drinking champagne a little bit. And then, of course, next week is the big one. I'll be out there in Vegas covering the NFL draft, so I'll be out and about doing my thing. So you definitely got to tune in because it's going to be a fun time.
100%. I mean, I think it just speaks volumes in itself, just what a couple months can do for someone who's been grinding, been working their tail off to get to where someone wants to be. And I think you're the example of that. So anyone out there that's tuning in, just know if you're working right now and it feels like things are stagnant, it's gonna pay off for you. So don't stop working, don't stop grinding. JTuck's the example of that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
let's dive into some draft talk here.
All right.
I want to take this initially. I want to start off because JTuck and I both kind of Cowboys guys a little bit in a way. So I want to take a Cowboys centered approach here and just kind of talk a little bit about what are you expecting with that 24th overall pick there. I know the offseason's kind of been an interesting one in Dallas. A lot of moves. Can't tell if they're positive or negative, and the fan base is definitely in a negative state right now. So, what's the bold prediction here with pick number 24?
And that's the hard part. We do not know. And I feel like due to the lack of sense of urgency that we had this all season, the Cowboys are going into this 24th pick with a lot of holes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the main one that kind of hit Cowboys Nation in the ribs was the Amari Cooper, letting go of Amari Cooper. So, a lot of Cowboys fans have this thought process. We need to go wide receiver. We need to go wide receiver. I'm personally don't think that we have to go wide receiver due to CeeDee Lamb. I'm a full CeeDee Lamb believer. I think Michael Gallup's going to be back healthy. He might miss a few games at the early start. So if you're going to bring in a wide receiver, you're probably looking to be a guy that's going to be like your fourth or fifth option because we did franchise tag Dalton Schultz. So I really don't have that sense of urgency. And it's going to be interesting to see if the Cowboys do. Now, here's the drawback with that. We know Cowboys fans right now are hurting. There's been a lot going on in the offseason. We can go on all day about it. Wide receivers are typically the Band-Aid for Cowboys fans. That kind of like makes things a little bit better. So the Cowboys just were to slap a wide receiver in there. Like, okay, you got Pickens. And like, oh, Cowboys like, okay, we're back. So I'm not sure if that's going to be the hush signing. I don't think they're going to do it. The other conversation, the other hole is offensive line. So especially in the interior, we did let go of Connor Williams, but rightfully so. But we also lost Lyle Collins, and so Terrence Steele is going to be our right tackle moving forward. So we lost a lot of depth when it comes to our offensive line. So a lot of people are kind of looking at, Kenyon Green or possibly Zion Johnson to be the pick at 24. It's really going to come down to how the board falls, to be honest with you. And as of right now, I really can't gauge what the Cowboys are thinking, because Jerry Jones says something this way, Stephen Jones says something completely opposite direction. But me personally, I'm like, give the pick to Dan Quinn, man, because he's the one that I trust. And so, if one of the linebackers was able to slide, whether that's Devin Lloyd out of Utah or Kobe Dean out of Georgia, that would be my pick. That would be my no-brainer. But, draft day, here we go. Hold on tight, Cowboys Nation, because when the Cowboys typically pick outside the top 20, it hasn't been too exciting. So we'll see next Thursday.
I do agree with that, and I like the linebacker take there because ever since I watched Georgia play in that game, watching and seeing Kobe Dean play, the man moves like Micah Parsons. He's got the sideline to sideline speed, and he's relentless with what he does. So I would be more than happy with another linebacker pick, honestly, especially where we fall at 24. It's not like last year where people were upset with us kind of reaching for a linebacker at the time.
At the time, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Quickly that changed, man.
Yeah, you saw how that turned out. But Gannon, what are you thinking? What are you thinking with the Cowboys? I know a little outside perspective here.
I mean, other than the Packers, Cowboys is probably the most that I keep up with, obviously being great friends with Bryce and co-host. I kind of get the Cowboys bug always kind of in my ear a little bit. But, I mean, in my opinion, I do like that selection. Nakobe Dean's always been kind of the guy that stood out to me since January time on the draft boards. He's just been a leader. He really runs the Georgia defense, signal caller. I mean, that's a national champion defense that ran through the SEC. So you're not going to have that, or it's not going to be a bad pick because you're going to be having him and Micah Parsons, the linebacking crew. That's crazy to think about. But in my opinion, the O-line's kind of the area of need because Dak's not getting any younger. He's going to stay healthy and with the offseason and all that. But then also with the run game, you got to make sure you got to have O-line, and they're young. They're guys that you need to get with the layout. Collins going and getting cut. That was huge. I mean, it's just another lineman, another body. You can't ever have too many O-linemen. I think that's what I've always told Bryce and other stuff we've talked about with Cowboy stuff is the Cowboys are the best when they're running the ball. And that's what Zeke up the middle. And that's how he gets his yards. And so I think with the O-line there, but that kind of takes me into a question I want to ask you, JTuck, is the complexion, especially with this first night of the draft, is going to be way different than kind of just a quote-unquote normal draft night with not quarterbacks going as early. There's going to have some more defensive players, O-linemen go early. Kind of what's your overall sense and gauge of the first round? What do you think? Just a wide, a parameter speaking here. What's your feel?
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. I think right now when you look at it, you're starting to see some of the quarterbacks catch a little steam, especially with Malik Willis and Pickett. If another one was to creep into the first round, there's 3 that goes in the first round, then that can change the dynamics of, what's available, especially for us at 24. And I know you guys are 20, 22 and 28, something like that, for Green Bay. And so if you get 2 or 3 of the quarterbacks to go, that can have a lot of defensive players. Because as you mentioned, it's very defensive heavy. When it comes to this draft, it's not as top sided as last year was. Like last year, man, you could have just set an auto draft and you was going to get a high caliber player in the top 12. Right now, it's going to be a lot of depth guys, but it's not that instant takeover domination type game guys. Game changers that you had last year. Because I mean, when you talk about the wide receivers, especially for the Cowboys and also for the Packers, right? It's like, why do you think like a wide receiver of impact is really going to be there at 22, 24? And so on. Last year, we wasn't talking about Jamar Chase at 24 or a Waddle at 22. Like that was just off the grid. So there's a lot of depth when it comes to these players, but there isn't that instant impact, I would say, unless you're in the earlier like top 5, top 8. But I think it's going to be some surprises. You also got to factor in the teams that are going to look for running backs. So you might see something where like Breece Hall could go in the first round as well. So it's going to be all over the board. One of my favorite positions is tight ends. That's a huge question mark. I've seen tight ends go as early in the second, and I can see the first one being pulled in the 3rd round. So it's all over the place. So buckle up on Thursday, man, because, sometimes NFL teams, they just get stupid. Like we
Yeah,
give them a
right.
lot of credit, and they just do stupid stuff. That clock starts ticking, and it's like, you know what? I don't know what I need. I'm just gonna grab something and go. And here we are, we're off to the races. So
I agree with that. I mean, you start to think about it, and teams, like, not only do they get stupid, but they get greedy.
right.
And especially that's where last night we were kind of talking about this, where we're looking at the top 10 picks, and then we're kind of looking at the back end of the draft, and it just seems like this is a type of draft that, like, has the potential to have a lot of movement. A lot of movement in the first round, and especially with these teams, a lot of teams actually having 2 first-round picks this year,
Right.
which we haven't seen quite often as much with how many teams. So I guess looking at the top 10, like, I'm looking there, and maybe even the top 15. And do you see a team possibly getting greedy and overspending / overpaying for a quarterback that early? If they feel like they're going to jump off the board, or do you think that the first quarterback won't go until after the top 15?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the quarterback position, so you have Houston at 13. They could possibly consider it. You have Washington, even though they got Carson Wentz. I don't think they would be in the quarterback market. You know, what could Atlanta be up to? I don't know. Pittsburgh, and I know New Orleans is kind of two of the teams that have been kind of focused and linked to Malik Willis as well. So, you know, they're in there, but it's just how much do they love them? You know, and I feel like last year, you know, you had you know, Fields, and you also had Lawrence, but then it was like kind of Mac Jones. Like, did teams really love Mac Jones like that? And all of a sudden on draft day, here comes the Patriots, right? So, you know, I think as the board starts to fall, you might see a team that you kind of caught you by surprise that may move up to try to get in quarterback and take one. I feel like if I had to bet, because it's going to be in Vegas, right? I would say 2 quarterbacks go in the first round. To be honest with you,
Which 2?
I think it's going to be Pickett. I think it's going to be Willis.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of piggybacking off what you said a little bit earlier. Those first 5 to 7 picks, I think, and then all the way to like the 20th range is kind of a no man's land this year, which in past years, sometimes the picks are more of a commodity. And that's when I think some teams are going to try and look to maybe trade back, or if somebody wants to get somebody, there's going to be an opportunity for teams to trade up because of just the overall class of the first round and people picking where they are. Because I'd argue some of those picks from 20 to the end of the first round are just as valuable, if not more so, than the team picks, and some teams and their needs where they're drafting at. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. But I want to get your take. What do you think the first 5 is going to kind of pan out? Because I know on our other episode, we were kind of going back and forth with number 1 pick. It kind of feels like Aiden Hutchinson's the betting favorite, if you want to say, but how do you think the top 5 is going to play?
Yeah, and that's the hard part about it this year. There's really no consensus, especially in the top 5, right? Because, you know, Aiden Hutchinson, I haven't dropped my top 50 board yet. I'll drop it next week, but he's number 1 on my board, right? But then you're starting to hear about Walker possibly. I know Kayvon Thibodeau, he was the consensus earlier coming into the draft, and he's kind of sliding a little bit. Another guy who I'm extremely high on, who I love, is Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame. Right. I've seen Kyle Hamilton go top 5. I've seen some cases where he landed into 18, you know, so it's like, I really can't gauge it because there's a lot of factors that comes with this year's class. I mean, also, if you look at the corners, right, typically corner is a position that you can always focus on, like, all right, you're going to get about 2 corners in the top 10, but now with Derek Stingley, you're going to have Sauce, but does Derek Stingley go in the top 10? Does he fall? He's been mocked to us numerous times. So, you know, it's going to be fun on Thursday, you guys. It's like, you know, because you really can't gauge it because, you know, especially with Georgia being so overloaded, a lot of these players might just get drafted earlier than expected just because of that Georgia name, you know, just like, you know, you might
get an Alabama effect now almost.
Yeah, it's the Alabama effect. It was like, I really don't know, but he's from Georgia. He played at Georgia. I'm going to go with him. So, you know, it's going to be fun because, like, you know, typically you don't see a defensive tackle go in the top 10, right? But then the way Jordan Davis's combines look, he's a damn creative player. So he might, you know, so you just don't know. Like, these teams are going to be sitting there like, man, this monster, you know, running faster than most NFL running backs out there. And he's, you know, 350 pounds. Like, do we pass on him? So it's going to be a lot of interesting conversations in that war room on Thursday.
Do you possibly see a scenario where Evan Neal goes to Jacksonville at 1 with Trevor Lawrence needing protection?
That was always my pick, right? So I feel like him, Evan Neal or Kwanwu would be the number one pick, because you think if you just drafted a franchise quarterback, you would want to protect it. But they're going through some coaching changes, and I feel like a left tackle helps the Jags kind of excel a little bit more than Aiden Hutchinson does. But I feel like Aiden Hutchinson will be the number one player on my board personally. And so it's like, do you want that pass rusher? But what good is a pass rusher when your quarterback's out there getting killed? You know, I would probably go offensive lineman. So if I really had to put money on that first pick, it just makes football sense to go with the left tackle, whether it's going to be a Kwanwu, who I have a little bit over Neal at that number one pick. But like I said, if the Jags mess around and go with Walker, I'm going to be completely shocked, because it's like, not only did you get what I don't think is the best pass rusher, then you also passed on your protection for Trevor Lawrence, and the tackles, they fall off a cliff. You have a few, like when he gets across, you really up there. I posted some videos today on Twitter about Trevor Penning. It gets shallow, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, if you're going to get one, you better get your starting left tackle early, or, Trevor Lawrence going to use his feet a little bit.
Tell our viewers what are your thoughts on Trevor Penning? I know it's been quite interesting. I mean, the videos that we've seen the last couple of weeks with the aggression and the guy we had on our show last night, he mentioned, I thought this was interesting, is him ending up in Kansas City
with those double picks at the end of the first.
Because of I know obviously Kansas City might need to look at wide receiver at one of those picks possibly, but the Penning, he was discussing how just the attitude that he has, the Travis Kelce get in your face type of aggression, type of bad mouth type of guy, like Andy Reid. Andy Reid likes that. He's for that. But what is your take on Penning, and where do you see him panning out?
I know when a lot of people talk about Penning, they talk about the toughness and you watch his horror movies and all this, but it's like when you really watch the film, like the clips I posted, the toughness is after the play. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's not like he's just physical through the whistle. Like, there's lots of opportunities where he's getting beasted. I posted Kyron Johnson, man, but the 3 clips before that, the Senior Bowl, like he was just getting tossed around like a rag doll. Yeah. So you get tossed around like a rag doll, but then after that, you're pushing and shoving and grabbing. Like, that isn't a nasty player to me. It's like, like that just, doesn't equal nastiness for me. So I think Penning's going to slide a little bit. He has the framework. He has the body to be a prototypical left tackle in the NFL, but he needs more work than a lot of people are giving him credit for. You mentioned the Chiefs here in Kansas City. They're talking heavily about the wide receiver position, but they're also talking about edge rushers as well. So, they ended up getting a steal last year in Creed Humphreys. Will they go left tackle? I don't know, because I still feel like Trevor Penning is going to be a project. It's going to be a lot of work. He's not your simple plug and play, like you can say, kind of how Rashawn Slater was last year. Like, Rashawn Slater's like, you know what, that's going to be an all-pro left tackle, left guard, wherever, right? But Penning's going to be like, all right, it might be a few years before you can really see that value of that pick.
Yeah.
With kind of some of the stuff, switching over to the Packers a little bit with that 22nd pick, I think it's a really interesting position. With also trade moves, with a trade possibility of getting an NFL wide receiver right now to come in and play with Rodgers. But if the Packers do go with the wide receiver there, which will, be very shocking going off of Packers draft history, which has not been the best, but we don't really need to talk about that. My guy out of those,
and another quarterback.
So. Well, we're going to keep going. We're not bringing that up. We're not
bringing up old stuff.
Yeah. Some of those 4 or 5 wide receiver guys. I mean, you got Olave, you got Burks, you got London, you got Dotson. There's a lot of options there in that first round. I mean, kind of the guy that I really have zoned in on is Chris Olave, just of the polishes with the route running and the 15 to 20 yard intermediate stuff that could, I think, really gel with Rodgers. Put on a Packers hat for a few seconds, but kind of what would you think with that 22nd pick, if it was a wide receiver, who would be your guy out of those guys?
I mean,
one more thing. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
The reason why I'm saying Olave over those other guys is those other guys are more of a big red zone target, go get it, instead of I don't want to say all around wideout because that takes away from the other guys, but just Olave's, the connection with Rodgers, I think, could go better than just a bigger red zone target.
Yeah, and it's hard because when you mention Chris Olave, I think he would be a good fit for the reasons that you mentioned. But it's like, Aaron Rodgers is a dynamic quarterback. He doesn't really need a wide receiver that needs to get it open and create space, right? And so I know historically he likes those big kind of physical red zone targets. So, you do have Drake London out there.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, a guy that I think would be great in Green Bay, honestly, would be Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Like the way that you can utilize him. Now, his biggest knock is he doesn't create a lot of separation. But if you just get the ball in his hands, he can do all the work himself. So I know Aaron Rodgers can get the ball in pretty much any wide receiver's hands, so that's not going to be the case. But Chris Olave, I feel like Chris Olave is a decent wide receiver. But if you ever watch film on Chris Olave, and I tell people like that meme where the guy's like with the girl and he's like looking back, like that's how you are looking at Wilson. Like, just like, like I was watching
a little brother.
I did a whole film study on Chris Olave, and the whole time it's like, man, I should be chopping Wilson, man. Like, so like this is boring, but I feel like Chris Olave will be decent. But for Green Bay, I just feel like there'll be other options that will probably be even more impactful. For Green Bay, you get Aaron Rodgers and you even take a flight on a Pickens. That could be a nasty conversation.
That's more of what I was thinking at the 29 range if we traded away the 22nd or when a DB maybe looking at a safety even there.
Right. Yeah. There's Pickens. If you want your separation guy, Sky Moore, who's a guy I was extremely high on earlier on. There's a lot of wide receivers. Like I said, it really just isn't these guys and then these guys. It's just, it's all little packs. So, Jalen Tolbert out of South Alabama is another guy. He's kind of a burner. You have Waddell Robinson out of Kentucky. So a lot of day 2 wide receivers, I think, is going to have just as much impact as some
Christian Watson is a big guy.
Christian Watson, man. I love Christian Watson. I know a lot of Cowboys fans we don't need him. Like, hell, I'm taking him.
He's a returner too. It's huge.
A returner. Like, he can do it all. Solid hands, reliable, great Senior Bowl. And that's my scouting process. I know a lot of other scouts I talk to on Twitter and whatnot, they disagree. But when I turn on the film, do I see a football player? I'm not big into measurables and what's his hand size and all that other stuff. Like, I turn on the film. I watch you 3 to 4 games. If I see a football player, I see a football player, man. And I trust you get it done on Sunday. So Christian Watson was definitely one of those guys. I turned on the film and I was like, Birdman hand rubs.
Well, last night when we were talking about Green Bay a little bit, and we kind of dove into like what they could do with the 2 picks. And personally, you mentioned Sky Moore. So if I'm Green Bay and I see a linebacker there, or a linebacker, or even an edge, I think I'm considering that at 22 before the receiver, because I think a guy like Sky Moore could be there at 28. And if he's not, even try to dip up a little bit in the 26, 25 range if you really want to go up and grab him. But I think at 22, if you see a guy like Devin Lloyd slip, I think if you're Green Bay, you got to jump on that.
Right.
And that's what I personally think about that. So
if that becomes best available at that point.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that they snipe us for Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd right in front of us, man. And that's the thing when we talked about Nakobe Dean, it's like it reminds me of last year when it came to Nick Bolton, who eventually came to Kansas City. It's like I turned on Nick Bolton's film, I was like, man, that guy got it. Intangibles, he comes downhill, just high IQ guy, high motor. They're like, oh, he's too short. It's just like, all right, but all the other stuff stacks up. So he slid a little bit to the second round. And you might see a case where Nakobe Dean starts to slide a little bit. Unfortunately, like you said, you could double dip, snag him for Green Bay, and there'll be plenty of wide receivers available to you at 28. So you can definitely double dip with those 2 picks. But it's going to be interesting to see these teams who has 2 first-round picks, like you said, Bryce. Are they going to stick with it? I think that a lot of these teams, they gave up so much to get those first 2-round picks. Like, they're going to want to get something out of it, man. If you gave up Tyreek Hill and you give up your second first-round pick to get another 3rd and additional 2nd, next year or something like that, man, Chiefs fans are going to riot. So
do you think there's a possibility there's more to it with this Kansas City trade of Tyreek Hill? Do you think they could utilize these 2 picks to move up? Do you think they have a guy like they're quote unquote looking at and they're like, there's a guy we got to go up and use that ammo? Or do you think they're going to sit and pick?
It's going to be interesting just because they're stacked back to back. That's why it just doesn't feel right. So they might try to stack those and move up. A guy that I've been focused on, because they did get Marquez Valdez Scutton. I think that Scantling, MVS, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they also got Juju Smith-Schuster. So if what I've been preaching to Chiefs fans, if you have the ability to get Jameson Williams and stash him for a little bit until he's fully healthy, the people I talked about, like he is more than on track to be back mid-October, let's say November. Okay, perfectly fine. You're going to have a dynamic wide receiver you can plug right back in that offense to get right back to work. And so if he slides a little bit due to the injury, I can see the Chiefs maybe leveraging those 2 picks and maybe moving up to go get that type of player. Because me personally, even with the injury, I feel like he's the top wide receiver in this year's class.
100%. Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you say Jameson Williams going as your number 1 wide receiver without revealing too much of your board. I'm guessing you got Garrett Wilson at number 2.
Right.
Rank another top. Who's your top 5? I guess receiver wise.
So I got Williams. I got London. I got Wilson. I have Burks.
Okay.
And I'm going back and forth with this with Clemson Olave, but I also like Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. So, and that's the hard thing because, a lot of people do top 100. I do top 50 because I don't want to be here doing this all day. So it's like sometimes it's like you got to kind of work it out. So it's coming down between Dotson and Olave. I just love a burner, man. Maybe it's because, as a Cowboys fan, we never really have one. And when you break down Jahan Dotson, man, it's just that guy, man, explosiveness. So he's more exciting to me than Chris Olave. So I might put him at my 5, Olave around at 6.
Okay. Yeah. There's 2 players that I want to ask you about, and those 2 players happen to be Georgia guys, and I think I'm just interested to get your perspective on this because I think they're 2 guys that I don't know if it's injury history with one of them, but Devante Wyatt and George Pickens. Why are these 2 guys the guys that almost seem to be slipping, but then they're at the same time it looks like they're climbing back up? And then they're slipping. So what is going on with these 2 guys? Because personally, I'm very high on Pickens, and I think he has the capability to be damn good in this National Football League. So what's going on with those 2 guys?
I think when it comes to Pickens specifically, you just haven't seen it enough. And I think the film is very limited. But like when you watch the film, it's all there. Like toughness, tenacity, physical. But I just think, a lot of scouts just, they want to see it put together in multiple years, which he hasn't done. Yeah. And I know with Wyatt, he's a tremendous talent. I just think that I think there was rumblings of some off the field stuff kind of there. It's kind of a little skeptical. But, and I want to say this lightly, like off the field stuff, unless it's crazy off the field stuff like violence, domestic violence and stuff like that, I take that serious. We kind of hear like locker room rumbling, he was late for practice and, stuff like that. I really kind of take it, tongue in cheek because like last year there was rumblings about Micah Parsons had some locker room stuff and he's been the perfect teammate in Dallas. And so kids grow up. We all do stupid stuff when we're young, especially with that amount of power and influence they have at 18, 19 years old. Hell, when I was playing college football, I was late to practice a lot. So, but it's like, so I feel like when Wyatt, there's kind of that skepticism when it comes to him, but he's a talent too. Also it's just being part of the pack, man. There's so many great Georgia players. Like someone has to be Tito Jackson, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of talent coming out of Georgia where you can see 4 to 5, maybe players taken in the first round.
Yeah. Ever since you said he brought up the Parsons locker room talk, I just started thinking about when Zeke tweeted at him. He said don't touch me in the locker room.
Yeah, man. And it's crazy. Like this time last year, man, I was the only one that kind of really spoke up for Parsons. I'm like, man, I'm doing a lot of research, and I just don't see.
He's a kid.
Those issues. Like my red flag is with the guy we drafted in the second round, actually, where I saw, those types of issues. But it's like with Mike, I'm like, it's locker room banner, man. We all do stupid stuff in the locker room. We like to be free. We like to wrestle, horseplay, or whatnot. So I wasn't too concerned. And the play that I saw from Mike, it just overweighs it. So, it really comes down to that, especially with Walker and Pickens. That there has been some injuries, but they've overcome it. It's not like they got injured, and before the bowl game or anything like that. So they're fully healthy. But then that's always the dark horse, right? Because that's the one thing us as independents we don't have, access to, right? Is the medicals, and come to find out, I think JOK from Notre Dame last year, the linebacker, we're sitting in the draft like, okay, what's going on? Like, oh, well, he had some type of heart condition. Well, no one told us that, so it's like, there might be some little things that teams are picking up, but I could see Wyatt going early. I would say maybe top 15, top 17. Pickens later first, early second at the latest.
Yeah, no, I definitely get some T. Higgins vibes with just the way that Pickens could be drafted right there, because I think he went like first pick, second round to the Bengals with his draft. But kind of going back to the quarterback class with I kind of want to throw it in this group: Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, and then Matt Corral. Out of those four, depending on where they go, who drafts them, whatever, do you see NFL starters out of any of those guys? And I don't mean that out of disrespect or with this class, but there is talent there. I'm not going to say these guys can't play football, because they're still going to be on an NFL team. But what's your honest opinion on this? Because that's kind of the guys if you would take out of the class.
Yeah. And like I said, when I do my top 50 pour, I'm like, man, I hate wasting spots on these quarterbacks, right? It's like I feel like you're going to see starters. I feel like Pickett and Willis will be the first two to have a starting opportunity, because if they go to a team, more than likely it's going to be a team that is in desperate need to get a quarterback like ASAP, like the Saints, probably the Steelers as well. So, but do I think they're going to surprise a lot of people and just be like this, Josh Allen, like type quarterback? I just don't see that, where we're going to be talking about Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett and Sam Howell in the next 4 to 5 years. Like, man, we missed that one. Now, I will say this, one of my biggest lessons I learned last year: you can take a kind of skeptical quarterback and put them in the proper situation, because Mac Jones was one of the guys where I watched. I was just like, but I never thought about, well, what if Bill Belichick gets him and fully molds him? That completely changes that dynamic. So, you might get a situation where you get a Malik Willis goes to a Mike Tomlin, right? Where he has the patience, he has that, that veteran leadership in Mike Tomlin as a coaching staff, and can mold him the way that they've won. So, I would say, if I had to guess, I would say maybe Pickett or Coral might be two of the quarterbacks we might get surprised by, unless Malik Willis just goes full Lamar Jackson, is just dashing across the league. Because he has a better arm than Lamar, of course, but he's not as athletic. But he has a great balance. But it's just
like he's just more raw. He's a project.
Yeah, he's just more raw. He's more of a work in progress. Like as a Florida State fan, man, I sat there and watched Lamar Jackson completely go Madden on us, man. So it's like, I don't see that from Malik Willis, but I can see maybe Coral or Pickett being this random surprise quarterback. Like, oh, we got that one wrong, but highly doubt it.
Personally, I'd like to see Willis end up in Pittsburgh and just let Trubisky ride with it for a year, I guess,
Right.
and just obviously that's not the greatest person to learn from. Obviously, they're two different styles of quarterbacks, but now I want to ask you straight up: who's the sleeper pick for you this year? Who's the guy that no one necessarily is looking at, or guy that could go in the mid rounds that who's your pet cat?
Ooh, I have a whole bunch of pet cats, man. But every time I mention them, they kind of shoot up the board. So my biggest pet cat, man, is Trey McBride, tight end out of Colorado State, man. Like, I love this kid, man, and I'll risk it all to get him in Dallas. Trey McBride's one of those guys. He's just dynamic, can do it all, can play the X, he can play the Y. He's a great blocker. He's just physical, tough, blue collar guy. That I loved him since I watched him back in January. So Trey McBride is one of my pet cats. Another one I mentioned today was Logan Hall, defensive tackle / defensive end out of the University of Houston.
He visited Dallas, didn't he?
Yeah, he did visit. So, you never know. Now, here's the hard part, because people asking, like, would you take him at 24, Tuck? Absolutely not. 56, absolutely yes. But, I feel like the hard part when it comes to Logan Hall, he kind of just gives us the same thing that Osa already gives us, but like, hell, double up, get both of them, right? So Logan Hall is another guy that I'm pretty much high on. Sky Moore, we all know that's one of my favorites earlier on. Jalen Tolbert. Let's see who else is on my pet cat list. Roger McQuarrie, cornerback out of Auburn, just physical, tough, tenacity, but he really doesn't fit the NFL mold. They'll say he's too short, kind of like they did Asante last year. So there's a lot of pet cats out there. And then, one I kind of mentioned today was Kyron Johnson, linebacker out of Kansas. Like, he is just, he's kind of having like a 7th round, 6th round guy. But when you watch him, man, the motor is just unlimited. Like, he's just tough, physical, put pinning on his butt a few times out there.
Looks like he can pass rush pretty well.
Yeah, he's a pass rush. He can come at the A gap, B gap, but he's kind of in that tweener position. Like, he's too small to be a DN. So, there's going to be like a Sam linebacker. But like, people act like you can't gain weight when you get to the NFL, man. If he puts on 8-10 pounds, he'll be perfectly fine,
Yeah.
man. So Kyron Johnson out of University of Kansas. And another guy too is Marquise Bell, safety out of FAMU. I got to watch him when he played at Coffeyville Community College. So HBCU project actually got a few HBCU guys coming on the show this week to kind of talk about their journey. So it's going to be kind of fun. But, he kind of gives me like this J-Ron Curses type vibe as a safety is concerned. So just lengthy, can do a little bit of everything, cover, can be physical. So there's a lot of guys out there I like, as far as pet cats, but those are my guys that got the official JTuck stamp of approval. So they're on my tab, man. They're on my tab. Well, actually, I'm gonna be on their tab in Vegas. Actually.
So next Friday morning, you get your radio show. What would be your number one headline that you think is going to happen from Thursday night in the first round of the draft? Somebody you trading up, more so moving wise, not a player going to a team, but little trades. Because I've seen a lot of different trade proposals, and some I just shake my head and don't see it happening, and some of them kind of like, okay, I could see this.
Oh, that's a good question, man. I don't know what the big still the draft headline can be, man, especially after this all season, man. The headlines have been so crazy with all these trades going on.
My God.
What's a little gut reaction that's going to be a first round take?
Yeah, I think if I can see anyone being aggressive, I can see the Chiefs being extremely aggressive and moving up, as we mentioned earlier. But I can also see the Eagles having a solid draft as well, finally. And I just feel like
that worries me.
Yeah, that's what worries me. I'm not sure if that's going to be headlines I want to wake up to. But if the Eagles completely blow these picks, I would be happy about it at 15 and 18. But It's like, man, if the Eagles mess around, my good friends, he does Eagles content. He did a mock draft, man. He messed around and got Jordan Davis and came around at 18 and got Kyle Hamilton. I'm like, bro, that would be horrible. Like no, you know what I'm saying? So I need the Eagles to mess this up and take a quarterback. I need them to go and get Kenny Pickett or do something stupid like that
exactly.
to do it with Jalen Hurts, man. So I got my eyes on the Chiefs and the Eagles, of course. And I'm trying to think who else. The Giants. I mean, the Giants sitting there at 5-7 in the division. It's pretty much auto draft when you're at 5-7. So it's like, they can really stack up. They got a brand new coach as well. So it's going to be different to see what their mentality is as well. So yeah, I got my eyes on the Chiefs moving up, being aggressive, Giants getting 2 solid picks, and the Eagles fumbling the first round.
You would love to see it. You would love to see it.
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about that last night as well. If they were to go receiver again, and at this point, it's like they just keep drafting receivers. So.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Go with the wide receiver and go
third year in a row
or something like that. Yeah, completely mess up the draft.
A little Jalen Reagor pick.
Jalen Reagor, Devante. Yeah, so I'll go with that. But also I think the interesting thing that a lot of people aren't watching for day one is what's going to happen with David Ojabo out of Michigan with the Achilles injury.
Yeah.
I mean, is he going to slide? Is someone going to say, you know what, I'll still take because the Achilles is different than ACL. Like he's just going to miss the whole first season. So what kind of happened with Jalen Smith and how he slid all the way into the second round. If you're able to get this guy in the second round, it's going to be a huge steal, especially if his recovery goes well. I had Greg Ellis on the show last Sunday or 2 Sundays ago, and he talked about when his time at the Dallas Cowboys, how he had an Achilles injury and how he was able to overcome it and become comeback player of the year. Like there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I mean, David Ojabo, man, the talent's there. So I mean, if he slides into the second round, again, man, like that's a great little stash player that you can get, sit on that pick for a little bit. I feel like the Cowboys can't do it because we have so many damn holes. But for another team, that would be a day 2 steal.
I agree. I think in my eyes, honestly, if there's a draft headline, a draft take that I'm going to go out and say, I think Stingley's going to drop. I think he is going to slide down the board a little bit more than people expect. And I would love if Dallas called and said, we want to climb up and grab you, because him and Diggs,
man,
nasty.
That'd be lovely. That'd be lovely, man. I mean, I can see it happening though, because the thing about Stingley, he has the injuries and he just doesn't have the film. Like people want to see you put consistent film together. Like just one good year way back in 2019 isn't going to cut it for a lot of NFL scouts. His pro day was, it was decent. It wasn't just eye popping. And so you could see Stingley. I mean, another interesting guy, like I said, is Kyle Hamilton. Like, I know a lot of people just don't like his pro day numbers and his combine numbers, and they don't like his size because they say that safeties at that size frame doesn't typically work out at the NFL level. And so if he slides a little bit, that would be definitely interesting to see, man. So like I said, this is probably going to be one of the most chaotic drafts that we've seen in quite some time, because there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of teams with a lot of draft capital.
Honestly, I want to make one remark on that because it actually got me thinking. In general, I think it's almost a blessing and a curse for guys like Stingley or even Ajabo with injuries or limited film. I just think it's almost a blessing and a curse. The blessing being you kind of slide down out of that area of the Giants, the Jets, and teams like it used to be the Browns and then the Texans, the Lions. You kind of slide out of that area of being a top end pick. And I think it almost, the blessing in itself is you slide down the board a little bit and end up with a team that's already damn good. With Stingley,
now the money's a little bit different, but
yeah. Hopefully they end up getting theirs. Yeah, I agree. That's part of the curse.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be nice to see Stingley with the star in his helmet. I wouldn't complain about that whatsoever.
It'd be a dream come true, man. Like I said, especially with what we have been going on at corner. But I would take Stingley, man, and definitely put him out there. And I feel like he has the most upside. Earlier on, even last year, like as soon as the draft ended last year, I was like, okay, so how do we get Stingley Jr.? Like I was just already there, right? And Sauce kind of slid up due to Stingley having the injury this year.
Yeah.
So, but I feel as far as upside, man, he has a huge upside, but he has also a huge floor as well, where he could be boom or bust. But at 24, it's worth the risk to me.
Yeah, I know you already you touched on your pet cat. You touched on your sleeper picks. But the last thing I want to leave you with, and then I'll let Gannon kind of say his piece. But so, who is your Asante Samuel this year? Who is your guy within this first round, or even maybe in the second round that you're looking at, and everyone else is saying, "Oh, this guy's too short. He's not big enough," or he's too big, not fast enough. Who is your Asante Samuel this year?
Yeah, the first one that I had already mentioned, kind of like my Ant-Man, right, is Kobe Dean. Like everyone's talking about his size, that being too short to play middle linebacker. But another guy I spoke about today is Marcus Jones, cornerback out of the University of Houston as well. So when I was watching Logan Hall, I was also like, man, who's your friend? So Marcus Jones is one of those guys that can just play. He's tough, has all the intangibles, man, but he's just, doesn't fit that standard that a lot of people want to go to. He's 5'8", right? So he can't play football anymore because he's 5'8". Plays entire life all of a sudden now. But yeah, Marcus Jones, cornerback out of Houston, is one of those guys that I think that a lot of people will pass on. And if he slides a little bit, I can see him probably being a third round guy, to be honest with you, just based off of his measurements alone, or even even later than that, because we saw it happen last year to a Darius Washington, the safety out of TCU. Like he can play ball hawk, football, everything is there. Nah, he's too short. We're not going to draft him. So it's a little stupid stuff like that where you can see a Marcus Jones possibly slide, but as far as the upside is there, it's all there. Another guy, it's kind of like not standard, and Cowboys fans get upset at me when I mention him, but it's Cole Strange, left guard out of Chattanooga. Like, I love me some Cole Strange, man. I actually tweeted him yesterday, like, yo, I see you in Dallas, and he liked it. I was like, that's what's up. But, he's a guard. He's only about 302 pounds, though, give or take. But he's not as, I don't want to call him soft, but soft as Connor Williams was. Like he's a physical, like he's what people think that Trevor Penning is, like that really just grit, grind, hard worker, in between the whistles type guy. It's gonna be blue collar. So I like Cole Strange, man, out of Chattanooga. He's like 302 pounds, so he really doesn't fit that measurement that a lot of people are looking for, because they want the big blocky guard, because they want to run the ball, even though the Cowboys aren't going to run the ball no more. He's another one. And then another guy that a lot of people are counting out, not really because of his size, but just because of his school. And I'm just like, bro, if he falls to us, especially now, because he was like the top of my board, but like PFF has him like in top 200 now. Isaiah Likely, tight end out of Coastal Carolina. Like, he is going to be that prototypical wide receiver / tight end that can do it all. kind of like that kind of Pitts mold, right? But he did at Coastal Carolina, and a lot of people say he hasn't did it against fair competition, and it's not going to work out the NFL level. But you're probably going to be looking on Sunday like, who the hell is this kid? This 4th round, 5th round pick out of Coastal, just tearing up the league because he can do it all, man. So those are kind of my guys.
Yeah, kind of. I'm just gonna say one more name before we kind of wrap this up. But for you guys at 24, I know name that Bryce and I talked a little bit, but going back to what I talked about with the old line earlier is Tyler Lindenbaum. I'm a big Iowa guy, and he's the best center. I know there's some questions if he could play guard, the reach, the length, all that's a little bit off. But I mean, that's when you talk about watching film. The film speaks for itself with him.
Right.
I've watched every Iowa game almost, but besides that, there's just clips and stuff that I see on Twitter of Iowa beat guys that I follow. I mean, it's just every single play. It's hard-nosed and is through it. It's pushing guys 20 yards down the field. That'd be a very good anchor, I think, for you guys playing center. If you guys would like to run the ball, you guys said you might not run the ball.
Yeah.
You ever decide to consistently make an effort to run the ball, then I think that'd be a very good anchor piece. But that was just kind of another name that I thought, and I think is going to be a really good player in the NFL. But
yeah, I love Tyler Lindenbaum. The only reason I'm out on Tyler Lindenbaum is not because of talent, just because of stupidity of the Cowboys, and they're going to ride with Tyler Biadasz, I feel like, because they just drafted him in 2020, and Cowboys don't want to give up on anybody. So, I just feel like they wouldn't go with a center. But, man, like, if you think about the Cowboys, and everyone calls us the Great Wall of Dallas, well, it started in the interior, right, with Travis Frederick. And as soon as he went out, things kind of unraveled. So, Tyler Biadasz played better as the season progressed. And so maybe if you get that anchor of a left guard that can really hold his own a little bit, then that's going to help Tyler out. But, of course, you're going to have a rookie next to you. So that rookie's going to come in and be day one ready. But I know Cowboys fans don't shoot the messenger. I feel like the Cowboys are still kind of high on Connor McGovern. It's going to give him another run at left guard. So that might be a reason they don't go guard, in the first round. Now, if you want Connor McGovern gone, then you're going to need to draft a guard at 24 because the Cowboys aren't going to feel any pressure if they take a guard in the 3rd round. So they're like, okay, we can kind of work him on. We have Connor McGovern, a guy we know, a guy we trust. But if they take him at 24, then instantly he's going to be the guy moving forward because they have no choice. So if you want Connor McGovern gone, then you better be pro Zion Johnson or Kenyon Green.
Yeah.
If they draft a guard any later than that, more than likely you're going to have Connor McGovern starting throughout camp, preseason, unless things change.
I agree. I 100% agree with that. And I think it'll be interesting in general to see what Dallas does, what Green Bay does, what all these teams do with the hectic movement capabilities within this first round, especially. But JTuck, I do want to say thank you again for coming on here. We greatly appreciate it, man. It's always a blast to hop on here, talk football with you. You obviously know your stuff. So yeah, that's all I got to say.
Hey, appreciate you guys for having me on. Likewise, we got to get you on my show too, man. We got to get you guys going. Next week's going to be hectic, man. But, I'll talk to you, Bryce, and see if we can set something up so you guys can come on and do some draft stuff. I don't get to Vegas till Thursday morning. And then after that, it's just going to be like nonstop. Yeah. Like they just sent me my calendar. I'm just like, yikes, man. So day one, I'm all work. I'm draft coverage. I'm, running around getting interviews, doing everything for the radio. Day two, I'm chilling, man, at the pool. Like, don't come looking for me. So
don't talk to me.
Yeah. But also, guys, send me that link for that shirt, man, because I want to see if I can help too, man. So shoot me on Twitter or wherever, man. I definitely want to support.
Appreciate that.
And you guys keep doing your thing, man. You guys are killing it, man. Like I wish I was doing this when I was young and really had a vision for what the hell I was doing. I kind of just backed into it, but here I am. But you guys keep up the incredible work, man. Keep pushing, grinding, man. I like you guys' push. I like the presentation of everything. You guys are killing it. Keep going and don't look back. That's my advice.
Appreciate that, man. That means the world. That means the world.
Just likewise what Bryce said is pleasure to put the name to the face finally and just talk some football. This was awesome. Definitely going to have to run this back for another time. But, yeah, best of luck. And then Bryce said with the new job, congratulations on that as well.
Thanks.
So, go Cowboys and go Packers. That's really all I got to say.
Well, we play each other this year, don't we? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, I've never been to Lambeau, man, because every time we play y'all, it's cold. But, let's do a nice little, little September game, early.
That would be the time to get to Lambeau. That would be the time.
Let's do something early in September. I wouldn't mind. Actually, they announced the schedule's going to come out on May 12th. That would be a fun opener. Cowboys, Packers at Lambeau, Mike McCarthy's return.
Yeah, that's the first time Mike McCarthy's been back. He's got a street named after him up there.
Yeah, I might go with that one. Green Bay is the opener. Let's do that. We did Tampa last year. But yeah, Green Bay is the opener. Yeah,
can't be Lambeau.
Yeah.
This year we'll go ahead and we'll walk in with a W week 1. This time we got it. But yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning into this episode. This was part 2 of our draft preview, draft show, episode, whatever you want to call it. Just talking NFL draft for the upcoming draft this coming Thursday. So you need some information. Follow JTuck on Twitter at JTuck151. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. Follow his journey. He's grinding just like us, and he's getting to a stage where he's making it. He's creating a wave for himself. So shout out to JTuck. We appreciate it very much. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for part 3 coming next week.